motorcycling enthusiasts, how are you doing? Welcome back. I hope you're all well and I hope you're having a great day. So the restoration on the racing green is finally finished, and in today's video I want to talk you through in detail how much it cost to restore this 1989 Rover Mini racing green with a John Cooper conversion. Before we get into the costings, let's maybe give a little bit more detail about this car, because it, as you can see, it is not standard. So it is a 1989 Rover Mini Racing Green, and it has a John Cooper conversion kit on it, which was launched for the 30th anniversary of the Mini. As you can see, this is in 30th anniversary livery, and it's got lots of John Cooper accessories on it, which I'll go through in a moment. Back in 1989, Rover launched 3 special editions, so you could have the Checkmate, the Flame Red, or the Racing Green. And at around about the same time, John Cooper's started selling a conversion kit, so you could convert the car to a John Cooper conversion. It upped the power of the engine by about 30% and just made it a lot more fun to drive. It was quite an expensive conversion at the time, but the conversion kits actually sold really, really well. And these cars, these John Cooper conversions, were the precursor to the Rover Mini Cooper. And then, as you've seen, and I'm sure you know, history will tell, that Cooper name lived on and still lives on today. So these conversion kits sold very, very well. You could have them fitted at John Cooper garages, or they could be fitted at a Rover dealership and you retained the warranty on the car. So they were very appealing. The success of these cars showed Rover there was a market, and the next car they launched was the RSP Mini Cooper, before going into mainstream Mini Coopers, and then later on into the SPI and MPI cars before BMW took over and started producing the modern Mini Cooper. So these are just some bits I've collected and that come with the car in the time I've owned it and when I bought the car originally. So when I first went down and saw pictures of the car, actually, this was the first thing that I saw under the bonnet, which made me think maybe it had a John Cooper conversion on it. The John Cooper conversion back in the 90s was a very comprehensive kit. There's the original manual there, and as you can see, it come with uprated cylinder head, an LCB exhaust system produced by Janspeed, twin carburetors, pancake air filters, Cannon filters, etc. And yeah, and we've got on the back here some of the accessories you could have bought with the car at the same time. So I'll show you that on mine shortly, but mine's already got the Cooper grille, the chrome bumpers, the Mistral mod wheels, the Motor Liter steering wheel, and the fancy throttle pedal, etc. I've also got the original John Cooper conversion certificate, and back in the day, they ran a magazine feature in Autocar magazine, so this was June 1989, and the title in there was, the article in there was titled Return of the White Roof, quite a famous article. And it's all about these John Cooper conversion kits on things like the Flame Red and the Racing Green. You'll actually notice the number plate on my car is very, very similar, because it would have come from a similar area. So that's HGJ and mine's HGH. So I think very, very similar on the postcodes. We'll get to the costs in a moment, but first I just wanted to remind myself and remind the viewers, I will try and remember exactly what's been done on this car. So we'll sort of go over it front to back and we'll have a look. So in terms of bodywork and metalwork, it has had a complete new front end. So that's new wings, front panel, the bonnet is original, and we replaced the scuttle panel and A panel both sides. Behind the exterior panel, so we had flitch panel repairs both sides, we had repairs on the inner wings, and we also repaired the bulkhead or toe board which runs underneath the car, because that was quite badly cracked. We fitted a new windscreen, all the wiper mechanism has been overhauled, and as we go further down, so we had new A panels, we had new door skins on both sides, and the bottoms of the doors repaired as well. When we go inside the car, we had the inner steps replaced, repairs on the inner sills, and brand new outer sills on there, both sides as well. And in the front of the car, both front floor pans have been replaced as well. As we come round to the back, actually the rear quarter panels were okay, didn't need any repairs. And from memory, from the best of my memory, I think the hill board was good on the car as well. I think we've done some repairs at the back of the floor pan, just where it meets the hill board. But yeah, generally okay at the back end there. We've done a few repairs inside the boot floor. But aside from that, on the back end, it wasn't too bad. When we go inside the boot itself, the rear boot was actually repaired because we had some corroded holes in there, and that actually has come out pretty well. So it's the original boot, just with some repairs. And then inside the boot, like I say, some repairs to the boot floor, and then all fully resprayed and refreshed inside the boot as well. As we go inside the car, this has all been refreshed and redone as well. So when I bought the car, it had a walnut dashboard in it, which was actually, it looked like it was a John Cooper original accessory, but it was all cracked and delaminated. So I actually chose to go back to the standard 3-instrument with a rev counter dashboard. And then, as you can see inside, we've got these lovely Corbeau GTS leather seats. These were, again, John Cooper accessories. And if we go into the back, it's also got the matching leather seats in the back there as well. As we look inside, we've got the John Cooper tread plates. They were an original accessory. And we've got the John Cooper floor pack. I had original John Cooper walnut handles and gear knob. Unfortunately, I had a bit of an accident where they got flooded and wet and they were no good. So I had to buy replacements. But the walnut cappings in the front and the back are the original John Cooper items. One of the nicest things in here is the Motor-Liter steering wheel, which is actually a John Cooper signed Motor-Liter steering wheel. And like I mentioned earlier, we've got that throttle pedal as well in there. Inside of here, I've overhauled all the heater. We've got the original Philips radio in there for originality. I didn't have to replace the headlining, which was good news. It was all good. And then everything else really was just a case of a good cleanup. Next up, we have the wheels. Now, you might be mistaken for thinking these are just standard mini light wheels painted white, Rover mini lights. They're not. I don't think at the time, actually, Rover done this style of mini lights. So these, again, were bought from John Cooper accessory. They're made by, I believe they're an Italian company, and they're Mistral mod wheels. So I actually sourced these, I sent them off. They were stripped and powder coated in the right colour, white paint, and we got the Cooper laurels or the Cooper metal badges on there as well. The tyre size is 165 60/12s, and yeah, they look really nice on the car. Could easily be mistaken for standard mini lights, but they're not. As you can see, actually, they're shown in the brochure here, and when you look very, very closely, you can see the Mistral mod markings on the wheels, as you can see there. They were actually quite an expensive part of the build, but I think they really make the car and finish it off nicely. Up front, we had, it's got 4-pot brake calipers on there and 7.9-inch grooved discs. They were all fully overhauled and replaced. And at the same time, new top and bottom swivels, Timken wheel bearings, outer CV joints, inner pot joints, new suspension cones, new high-lows, brake hoses, bump stops, everything like that on the front. When we moved to the back, the rear subframe was shot to bits, couldn't really be repaired, so that was replaced with a mini spares item and the same treatment at the back with new brakes, wheel cylinders, new hoses, new suspension cones, new dampers all round, Yeah, and generally a full refresh on the back end there. Moving under the bonnet, I'll try to remember what's been done, but there has been a lot of work done here. So I mentioned earlier, we repaired the toe board, repaired all the bulkhead, and all the inside of the engine bay has been resprayed. In fact, all the inside of the engine bay, the inside of the boot, the full interior, and underneath on the floor as well, has all been resprayed. So the gearbox has been fully overhauled, refreshed, with new bearings, synchro hub, synchro rings, etc., and new seals. And as we move upwards, all the ancillaries have been replaced as well. So we've got new starter motor, new alternator, a new Evo distributor, which is matched to the camshaft profile, and we have new ignition coil, spark plugs, rotor arm, distributor cap, etc. as well. On the braking system, we didn't mess around. We've got a new master cylinder, all new brake lines, and as I've just mentioned, all the brakes replaced as well. We have a Maniflow exhaust system. We've got an LCB downpipe, which has all been ceramic coated. On the cooling system, the radiator was actually refreshed and repaired, so it's a genuine Rover item, but we've had new hoses and new water pump, fan belt, fan, etc. as well. The carburetors were purchased second hand and then fully overhauled by me with a full rebuild kit, new needles, jets, ultrasonically cleaned, and then all set up. The engine is the original engine that's on the logbook. It's a 998cc that has been bored out to plus 60, which I believe makes it either a 1041 or a 1045cc engine. Flat topped pistons. The cylinder head is the original stage 3 John Cooper cylinder head, but fully refreshed with new valves, guides, all set up, etc., and all refreshed and renewed. We're using ARP bolts. It's got a centre main strap, and it's got a simplex timing chain and an MED backplate on the bottom with an Evo camshaft, and we're running MED 1.3:1 roller tip rockers at the top end. Aside from that, I'm struggling to remember what else. A complete brand new wiring loom, and then really this car has just been stripped down to every last nut and bolt. The shell was stripped down until there was nothing left on it at all, and everything has been overhauled, refreshed, restored, or if in any doubt has been replaced. Last few bits, I've also forgot to mention that the seats were taken away. Actually a repair done on here. All the bolsters were repaired, and there was a split in the rear seats, so had that done at the same time. And the things like the rear radius arms were overhauled, reamed out, new radius arm pins put in, and on the front arms as well, new bearings and pins on the front arms as well. So without further ado, let's get into how much it all cost. Right then, the bit you've all been waiting for. How much has it cost me to do? And I guess, what are the next steps? What's next for the Racing Green or the next project? So I think the first thing I want to point out is that I am very, very proud of this restoration. It is the most comprehensive restoration that I've done myself. Prior to this, probably Project Sprout was the biggest restoration I've done. But with Project Sprout, it wasn't me that painted it, it was Mark. He done an absolutely fantastic job. But there was always that little bit of me where I wanted to do the paintwork as well. And I'm pleased to say it's come out really, really well. So this car, it's a very, very special car. Actually, aside from PL, it probably has the biggest history file of any of the minis I've got. The amount of receipts I've got to go with the car is just absolutely insane. And it just shows over the years the sort of money that's been spent on it. So I'll try to make this as quick and painless as possible. We won't go too much into the details. So what I've done, I've kept a log as we go through, and I've put everything into categories so that when I get to the end, I can tell you how much it costs to do each category. So we'll start by having a run through them, and I've got a bit of detail on how much I've spent with each retailer as well. So in terms of the categories, so I spent £929 on the brakes and the drivetrain of the car, £53 in decals, £274 on the electrics, which would have been the new wiring loom. The biggest spend on the car was the engine rebuild. And when I talk about the engine rebuild, we're talking about everything associated to the engine. So it's the labour for doing the engine, it's the machining costs, it's the parts, and it's things like the carburetors and the ancillaries and that go on the engine as well. So the engine itself, the engine and gearbox rebuild, accounted for 32% of the overall spend of the car. And that was £3,819. It sounds a lot of money, but that is the engine and gearbox fully refreshed and all the bits that go on it as well. So when you look at it like that, it's not actually too bad. I spent £260 on the exhaust system. The exterior trims, £992, so that was quite a lot. So exterior trim, we're talking about bumpers, grills, headlights, things like that, headlamp rings. £100 on the instrument pod, I bought second hand. The interior and trim, I spent £1,116 on, so that was bits and bobs on the interior, things like having the steering wheel refreshed, the work on the leather seats, etc. General nuts and bolts, £31, although I'm sure there was more costs that I probably haven't accounted for in here. Paint and consumables, so the paint that has gone on the car. So this is talking about the exterior paint, it's the Gravitex, it's all the coatings, it's all the epoxy primers and everything like that as well. So the paint and consumables, including masking tape, masking paper, thinners, gun cleaner, £1,057. And then panels, so most of the panels on here are heritage panels. Certainly all the exterior panels are heritage. The panels come to £1,148. So if you put the two together, the panels and the paint and consumables, £2,206. So, you know, there's always this bit when people take their cars into a quote for a respray and they get quoted like £3,500, £4,000, £5,000. It's quite easy to see how you can get to that sort of figure. So there's no labour included in any of these costs here. And paint and consumables and panels, £2,200. That accounted for 19% of the overall build. And if you're very clever with maths, you know how much it costs by now. £45 for the radio. There's £859, which I just put as restoration parts. I've not gone through and itemised every single invoice because it would take me hours, if not days, to do that. So restoration parts are bushes, brackets, little bits and bobs, just bits you they're bits you forget about as you go through the build. So bits and bobs really, the restoration parts, £859. £40 on sound deadening, the front and the rear subframes, so one new, one powder coated and shot blasted, etc. £787. And then finally the wheels and the tyres, £676 for them. So a lot of money spent on the wheels and tyres. And then finally, I also sold some of the stuff that either I didn't use or that I'd taken off and replaced, but still had good second-hand value. So I actually got back nearly 5% of the costs on that. So selling back the parts I don't use, and I say don't use, most of the parts were just old parts that I've taken off. £561. So yeah. So the total cost of doing this restoration, not including buying the car, drum roll please, was £11,671. I bought the car for £4,200. That means the car owes me £15,871. So arguably £16,000. £11,600 to do the restoration, of which none of that is labour. So labour on top of that would be a hell of a lot more. So what do you think? 16 grand. Is it a 16 grand car? I think it is. I think genuinely, but I don't think it's worth, I'm not getting carried away, I don't think it's worth much more than that. But for a fully restored Mini, even now the market's not very good, I still see them going for £14,000–15,000. So I think we're there or thereabouts. I absolutely spent far more than I was expecting to spend. It was a no expense spared restoration. It took me probably 3 times longer than I was expecting it to take as well. And actually, the time taken is where the extra expense goes in, because if you are really on it, you're doing it quickly, like every single week, and you're getting it done in 6 months. You are very, very conscious of the costs, and you're able to keep very tight control over it. What happens when it's spread over a long period is you spend £1,000 at Mini Spares. A few months later, you've forgotten about it. You spend another £1,000. And although I was keeping track of it as we go through, it's kind of less painful on the pocket when it's spread out over a longer period. So you get to this point where you think, I don't care, don't worry, I just want it right. I'll buy, you know, the MED 1.3 rockers. I'll buy the special MED rocker cover. You just spend the money. But I was diligent in things like the radiator I repaired, and there's quite a few other bits that you could go absolutely mad and just buy everything new. In terms of the money spent with the different vendors, I won't go out and call out all of them, but there's a few I'll just call out straight away. So the biggest amount of money I spent was with Mini Spares. I spent £3,961 with them, so nearly £4 grand. The bit I want to point out here is, if you get the Mini Forum membership, which costs £7.50, I think, for a year, you get 7.5% discount on everything you buy at Mini Spares. So actually, on that spend of nearly £4,000, I've saved around 340 quid just by paying that £7.50 for the Mini Forum membership. So well worth it. Little tip for you, if you're going to be spending money on restoring a Mini, it's worth doing something like that, joining a club, getting a discount code and then using it. Aside from that, next biggest spends, there was £2,600, just over that, which went to Paul Jeffries, who'd done all the engine and gearbox work. That wasn't all labour. Paul included parts in that as well. There were some other costs, because as I say, I think on the previous I mentioned we spent about 3,800 quid on the engine in total. But those were the costs that went to Paul for the bits he done for me. And then, yeah, aside from that, Bull Motif, I spent £707 there. Didn't buy everything from Bull Motif, but there were a few bits and bobs that I chose to use them for. Nearly £800 with Jowl Paints, so they provided all the paint to do the exterior for the car. And then MED, we spent £583, which was probably a little bit extravagant because I didn't need to go for some of those bits. I could have maybe reused the old ones. So, like I said, get down in the comments. What do you think? Just shy of £16,000. I'm not worried. I'm quite pleased with that. What are we going to do with the Mini next? It's middle of winter now. I definitely want to use it for a few shows. Bingley Hall Mini Fair. I would be lying if I said I'm never going to sell it, because ultimately this channel is Classic Mini Workshop, and I've got to keep a churn of projects coming through. Otherwise it just gets boring. So I've no need to sell it. It's not like, right, I need to sell that car because it owes me a load of money and I need to sell it to buy another project. So there's no rush to sell it, but I guess ultimately I don't get a massive connection to cars. To me, they are just metal and rubber and wheels. You know, everything has a price. There are cars that I don't want to sell. I don't want to sell PL, and I don't want to sell this. But if the right price comes along at the right time, then yeah, I don't get too emotionally attached. And like I say, from my perspective, I'm always thinking, if I want to keep the channel going, what am I going to do next? I can't just keep collecting cars. You've got to move them on and move them about. And just final comment, as the old wheeler dealer Mike Brewer days always goes, none of this cost includes labour. So once you factor in the labour, the cost would be astronomical. I reckon I've probably put 300 to 400 hours into this restoration, maybe even a little bit more. So I'll let you do the sums on the value of the labour. It's probably quite eye-watering and definitely would make this non-financially viable. But being able to do it yourself just makes all the difference. And I genuinely think I've done a better job than it would have been if I've outsourced it to someone to do and got far more enjoyment out of it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to give it a thumbs up. I really hope you've enjoyed the build restoration series on the racing green. Thank you everyone for all your support, your kind comments. I think we'll probably just be shy of 100 videos in the playlist for this restoration. So that shows the level of detail and how much work has gone into this car. So thanks everyone for watching. I will catch you again on the next one. Cheers.